it was a mix-up with the guest list, but you don't accidentally leave out the person who's been paying your mortgage for 2 years. I've been going over that weekend in my head for months now, replaying every moment. The drive, the front door, my brother's face when he saw me standing there in the rain with 2 kids in a casserole dish. I keep thinking about what I should have said, what I should have done differently, and every single time I come back to the same answer. I should have turned the car around before I ever got off the highway. But I didn't. And I think part of me needed to see it, needed to watch it happen in real time, in front of my own children, so I could finally stop pretending it wasn't happening at all. My name is Audrey. I'm 31 years old. I have a 7-year-old daughter named Piper and a 4-year-old son named Miles. I work as a medical billing coordinator from home, which sounds boring because it is, but it pays the bills, mine and, for a long time, someone else's too. My brother's name is Roland. He's 36. He married his wife Celeste about 4 years ago in a ceremony I helped pay for, though nobody mentioned that in the toast. They have a beautiful house in Asheville, North Carolina. Craftsman style, wraparound porch, the kind of place that ends up in magazine spreads about mountain living. They host, that's their thing. Holidays, birthdays, long weekends. Roland and Celeste's house is always where the family goes. I live in Columbus, Ohio. It's a 6.5-hour drive on a good day, 7.5 in the rain, which is what I got on that particular Saturday in April when I loaded my kids into the car at 6 in the morning and pointed us south toward the mountains. I want to back up, because to understand what happened that weekend, you have to understand what the 2 years before it looked like. Roland lost his job in the fall of 2022. He'd been working in logistics management, good salary, solid benefits, and then the company restructured and he was out. He and Celeste had just bought the Asheville house 6 months earlier. Stretched thin, bigger mortgage than they probably should have taken on, but they were optimistic. Then suddenly they weren't. He called me on a Tuesday night. I remember because Piper had a school thing that morning and I was still in my pajamas at 9 p.m. catching up on work. He didn't ask right away. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing. Mom's Garden, a show we'd both been watching, the price of groceries. And then he said quietly, almost like he hoped I wouldn't hear it, "I don't know how we're going to make it through the next few months, Audrey." I asked him what he needed. He said he hated to ask. I told him to ask anyway. They needed $1,800 a month to cover the mortgage and the car payments. He'd have something lined up soon, he said. Maybe 2 months, 3 at the most. He'd pay me back every cent. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He's my brother. I'd grown up sharing a bedroom wall with him. I knew the sound of his laugh before I knew almost anything else about the world. What I did not say, and I should have, was that $1,800 a month was more than a third of my take-home pay. That I was already stretched thin as a single mum with 2 kids, one of whom had just started speech therapy twice a week at $60 a session after insurance. That saying yes meant I would stop putting money into my emergency fund, stop contributing to my retirement account, start doing the mental math every time I bought groceries. I said yes anyway, because I loved him, because I thought it was temporary, because I told myself that's what family does. 3 months became 6. 6 became 12. Somewhere around month 14, Roland got a new position. Not quite the same salary as before, but stable. He mentioned it on a phone call almost in passing, said they were getting back on their feet. I waited for him to bring up a repayment plan. He didn't. I told myself he would when things settled down. They settled down. He didn't bring it up. I transferred $1,800 every first of the month for 22 months. I did the math once, late at night when I couldn't sleep, sitting in my kitchen with a calculator app open on my phone. $39,600. I closed the app and didn't open it again. The invitation came in February, a group text to the whole family. Roland and Celeste were throwing an early spring celebration, which is a real thing that real people apparently do in Asheville. Catered dinner, bonfire, the whole family invited and several of their friends. A weekend thing starting Saturday afternoon with rooms set up in the main house and the guest house for anyone coming from out of town. I texted back immediately. "Count me in, can't wait. Should I bring anything?" Celeste replied with a heart emoji. I took that as a yes. I spent the next 6 weeks looking forward to that weekend in a way that probably should have told me something about how isolated I'd become. I bought Piper a new dress. I made my grandmother's green bean casserole, the one with the crispy onions on top that Roland had always asked for at Thanksgiving. I talked to my kids about the mountains, about seeing their cousins, about staying up late by a fire. Mars asked me every single morning for 2 weeks, "Is it the Asheville weekend yet?" The drive down was fine until it wasn't. Rain started about 2 hours in, the kind of steady grey April rain that turns highways into mirrors. I stopped twice for the kids, once for a bathroom break outside of Chillicothe, once for food somewhere past Charleston, West Virginia. By the time we crossed into North Carolina, Miles was asleep and Piper was watching something on her tablet, and I was white-knuckling it around mountain curves in the dark. I pulled into Roland's driveway at 4:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I remember thinking we'd made it before 5, before dinner, before anything started. There were already 8 or 9 cars parked along the gravel path, lights on inside, the kind of warm glow that means people are already laughing and pouring drinks somewhere you're not yet. I got Miles out of his car seat, still half asleep and heavy against my shoulder. Piper grabbed the casserole dish from the back seat. I'd wrapped it in a dish towel to keep it warm, and she took my hand and we walked up to the front door. I knocked, then rang the bell because nobody came. Celeste opened the door. She looked at me the way you look at a delivery person who's arrived at the wrong address. Just for a half second, but I saw it. Then her face rearranged itself into something that could pass for a smile. "Audrey," she said. "Oh, you're here. We're here. We're here." Miles lifted his head off my shoulder and blinked at her. She stepped halfway into the doorway, not quite opening it all the way. "I thought, Roland said he reached out to you." "Reached out about what?" She glanced behind her into the house. "Can you hold on just a second?" She closed the door. She closed the door in my face while I stood on the porch in the rain with my children. I stood there for what felt like a very long time. Piper looked up at me. She didn't say anything. She's 7, and she understood enough to know that something was wrong, and she was handling it with the kind of quiet dignity that makes me simultaneously proud of her and heartbroken that she already knows how to do that. Roland opened the door about 2 minutes later. He was wearing a fleece pullover, holding a glass of red wine, and he looked, I want to choose this word carefully, annoyed. Not guilty, not embarrassed. Annoyed. Like it was a complication he hadn't budgeted time for. "Audrey," he said. "Hey, I texted you." "When?" "Last week. We had to adjust things. The headcount got. It's a smaller thing than we originally planned, and with Celeste's family coming in from out of town, the space is Roland." I kept my voice very even. "I drove 7.5 hours. I know, and I'm sorry about that. I really thought you got my text." I hadn't gotten any text. I checked my phone right then, standing on his porch. Nothing. No message, no missed call, no voicemail explaining that somehow the invitation that had been extended 2 months ago was being quietly rescinded a week before the party. He knew I hadn't gotten it. I could see it in his face. But he also wasn't going to say that. He was going to hold on to the text message story because it was the only thing standing between him and having to look his sister in the eye and tell her the truth. "So what do you want me to do?" I asked. "Turn around and drive home?" He opened his mouth, closed it. Then he could, there's a Holiday Inn about 20 minutes from here. We could meet up for breakfast tomorrow morning, just us. Catch up properly. He was offering me a Holiday Inn and a breakfast that would last 45 minutes while he got back to his bonfire. I looked past him into the house. I could see people in the kitchen. Celeste's sister. A few people I didn't recognize. My mother sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, laughing at something someone had said. My mother, who also had not thought to text me to ask if I'd gotten Roland's message, who had seen that group invitation and had presumably known at some point that I wasn't going to be there and had not said a word. "Is Mom staying here?" I asked. "She flew in yesterday," Roland said. "She's in the guest room." So, my mother flew in from Phoenix. Stayed in the guest room of the house my money helped keep out of foreclosure, and nobody called me. I said okay. Just that one word. Roland seemed confused by it, like he'd expected something else. I shifted Miles on my hip. I looked at Piper. "Come on, baby," I said. "Help me carry the casserole back to the car." She picked it up without a word. "My good girl, Audrey," Roland started. "Have a good party, Roland." I got my kids back in the car. I found the Holiday Inn. It was actually a Hampton Inn, 23 minutes away, and it was $189 a night, which I put on my credit card without letting myself think too hard about it. I got the kids settled, ran a bath for Miles, ordered pizza delivery, and sat on the edge of the hotel bed while Piper ate and watched cartoons. She looked at me at some point and said, "Mommy, why didn't they let us in?" I told her that there'd been a mix-up with plans, that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes with communication, that it wasn't because of anything she did. She nodded very seriously and went back to her pizza. I went into the bathroom and sat on the floor next to the tub and cried into a hand towel so she wouldn't hear me. I want to be clear about something. I wasn't crying because Roland hadn't invited me. I was crying because I finally let myself understand what that meant. The $1,800 a month. The phone calls I always returned, the holidays I made the drive for, the birthday gifts for his kids, the yes when he needed it and the space when he didn't. All of it had added up to this: a porch in the rain, a Holiday Inn, a text he supposedly sent that never arrived. I slept terribly. The kids slept fine because children are resilient and had no idea what was happening, which I was grateful for. In the morning, I texted Roland, "I'm not going to make breakfast. Safe to drive back today. Hope the party was great." He called twice. I didn't pick up. When I got home to Columbus, 9 hours because we hit construction outside of Charleston, I did 3 things. First, I transferred the money to cover that month's contribution, because the transfer was scheduled and I hadn't cancelled it yet, and I needed a day before I could deal with it. Second, I called my therapist and left a message asking for an emergency session. Third, and I'm not sure why I did this one, except that my brain works in strange ways when I'm exhausted, I pulled up the last 2 years of bank statements and added up every transfer I'd ever made to Roland's account. $41,400. 23 months because I quietly kept going even after he'd gone back to work, because he'd never asked me to stop and I'd never said anything. I cancelled the next transfer, and then I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I called Roland. He picked up on the second ring, warm voice, like nothing had happened. "Hey, Audrey. So glad you made it back safe. I felt terrible about Saturday, I really did." "Roland," I said, "I'm stopping the transfers." Silence. "What transfers?" "The $1,800 a month. I've been sending it since October 2022. I'm stopping it." More silence. Then, okay. Obviously you don't have to keep helping us. We're in a much better place now. "I know you are. That's actually why I'm stopping." He said he understood. He said he appreciated everything I'd done. He said it in the tone of someone who is hoping the conversation ends quickly. "Then, I hope you know that the party thing, that wasn't meant to be personal, Audrey. We had constraints with space. And I don't want to talk about the party," I said. "I just wanted you to know about the transfers. Have a good week." I hung up. My mother called me 3 days later. She'd heard from Roland. She wanted to talk about it, about how he was under a lot of pressure, about how Celeste has always been particular about guest lists, about how I needed to understand the situation from their side. I listened until she finished. Then I said, "Mum, you were sitting at his kitchen island when I was standing on his porch in the rain. You didn't call me." She said she hadn't known what to say. "That's fine," I said. "You don't have to know what to say, but I needed you to say something." That conversation ended quietly too. No yelling, no ultimatums. Just a lot of things that had been pretending not to be true, finally admitting what they were. I didn't hear from Roland for about 6 weeks. Then, on the Sunday afternoon in early June, I got a text that just said, "Can we talk?" "I've been thinking." I said sure. We scheduled a call for that Thursday. He apologized. A real one. Not the "I'm sorry you feel that way" kind, or the "I'm sorry there was a miscommunication" kind. He said he'd been ashamed about the money, about taking it for so long without addressing it, and that shame had made him pull away instead of showing up. He said excluding me from the party was wrong, and he had known it when he did it, and he told himself stories about why it was okay, and he knew now that none of those stories held up. He said he wanted to make it right, that he and Celeste had talked about putting together a repayment plan. I told him I appreciated him saying that. I told him I wasn't ready to talk logistics yet, but that I was glad he'd called. And then I said the thing I've been sitting with for weeks. Roland, I need you to understand that the money is one thing. But Piper asked me why we weren't let in. She's 7. I had to explain that to her on the floor of a hotel room. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. I know, he said. I know. We're not fixed. I want to be honest about that. We talk every couple of weeks now, and it's stilted sometimes, like two people learning each other again from scratch. Celeste has not reached out to me directly. My mother and I are in a strange, careful place where we're both trying not to push too hard. But I stopped pretending. That's the thing that changed. I stopped pretending the money didn't matter, that the porch didn't happen, that Piper's question didn't cut me somewhere permanent. There's a photo on my phone. I took it that Saturday night in the hotel room. Piper and Miles, pizza in their laps, cartoon on the TV. Both of them completely unbothered by the fact we were in a Hampton Inn in Asheville instead of wherever we were supposed to be. Piper's got sauce on her chin. Miles is laughing at something on the screen. I look at that photo sometimes when I'm having a hard day. They were fine. We were fine. And I was finally, for the first time in a very long time, done being the person who shows up anyway, every time, no matter what, and acts like it costs her nothing. It cost me something. It cost me a lot of things, and I'm the only one who was ever going to say so. I thought a lot about what kind of person I was before that April weekend, and I think the honest answer is I was someone who confused sacrifice with love. Not the same thing, not even close. I sent Roland $1,800 a month for almost 2 years. I told myself it was because I loved him, and I did love him. That part was real. But if I'm being truthful with myself, there was something else underneath it. I kept giving because giving felt like proof. Proof that I was a good sister. Proof that I was needed. Proof that the connection was real. Because if I stopped, I might have to find out whether it existed at all without the money holding it up. That's not wisdom. That's fear dressed up as generosity. What I know now is that there's a version of kindness that actually costs you nothing. The kind where both people walk away okay. And then there's a version that slowly hollows you out while the other person never even notices the sound it makes. I was doing the second kind for a very long time and calling it the first. Roland didn't set out to take advantage of me. I don't think he's a bad person. But he let it happen, and then he let it keep happening. And at some point, the silence on his end became its own kind of answer. Actions, or in this case, inaction, always are. You can tell a lot about what someone believes you're worth, but how long they're comfortable not saying anything. The porch moment. Piper standing next to me with that casserole dish, rain coming down, Celeste's face doing that half-second rearrangement. That moment didn't create the truth. It just made the truth impossible to look away from anymore. And I think that's actually the thing I'm most grateful for, as strange as that sounds, that it happened in a way I couldn't explain away. There was no version of that story where everything was fine. There was no maybe I misread it. I needed that clarity. I'd been living without it for too long. Piper asked me why they didn't let us in. 7 years old, pizza in her lap, totally unbothered 20 minutes later. But she asked, and I had to sit with the fact that I'd driven my kids 7.5 hours to the door of a house I helped save, and my daughter had to watch it close in our faces. That's the moment I stopped negotiating with myself about what was happening and what I needed to do about it. Resilience isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. For me, it looked like cancelling a bank transfer. It looked like not picking up the phone twice. It looked like sitting on the hotel bathroom floor for 10 minutes and then getting up, washing my face and going back out to sit with my kids while they watched cartoons and ate pizza like the whole world was fine. Because for them, it was. And that was my job, to make sure that whatever was broken between me and Roland, Piper and Miles never had to carry it. I think the most intelligent thing I've ever done wasn't anything I said to Roland. It was recognizing that I had been making a decision every single month, every single transfer, and that I could make a different one. That's it. No confrontation, no speech, just a different decision. You teach people how to treat you, not with lectures, with what you keep accepting and what you finally stop.